The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Tyler Wired, and he is the Director of Strategic Partners at Candor Expedite. And we are going to talk a little bit about Candor Expedite, what they do, and we're also going to dive into something new they've brought to the market this year, which is their Candor food chain, and that's helping to move temperature-controlled, temperature-sensitive product and freight in a better way throughout the supply chain. So we're going to dive into that and talk about kind of some of the challenges around temperature-sensitive freight and moving that, and how they've tried to address that challenge and what that looks like for the future of temperature-sensitive freight. So, Tyler, welcome to the show. How are you?
Kevin, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Definitely happy to get you on here. Happy to talk about this. I think it's something that certainly is a challenge, you know, whether it's from the warehousing perspective or from the freight perspective. There's a lot of things that go into temperature sensitive product and, you know, getting it through the supply chain to ultimately getting it to the end customer. So very interested to talk about this. So before we dive into kind of that discussion, why don't you tell us just kind of brief overview, you know, what is Candor Expedite and what is you guys do?
Sure. Yeah. So we were founded in 2017 by our owner, Nicole Glenn. She's currently our active president and CEO. We're a privately held and operated company. Our headquarters are based out of Plano, Texas, and we also operate out of Joliet, Illinois, which is where our original office was founded. And then I'm remote at a satellite location out of Kansas City. So as far as how it was founded, I mean, I think the name Candor, being truthful, being transparent, is really what Nicole's vision for the company is in an industry that is somewhat not always transparent. I think that's always been her main goal. Is I want to be transparent with my customer. If something goes wrong, let them know. And so I think I was actually her client. So we met.
Oh,
and
interesting.
So I think in 2013 or so. And so at the time she was with a different company, and then she established Candor Expedite in 2017. So her vision and Candor's vision has always been that customer-centric, go above and beyond to support our customers. So, I mean, I think in a business where you have 20 to 30,000 brokers, it's how do you differentiate yourself? And for us, it's been with Expedite, handling specialty shipments, building relationships that way, and then growing out with our customers. So as far as Candor Expedite goes, I mean, our core service has always been time-sensitive expedites. We do a lot of hot shot ground shipping. We do a lot of team truckloads. And out of excelling with that as our core service, our clients have come to us and said, you know, Tyler, Candor, Nicole, we love your guys' service. We love your communication, your transparency. We want you to start handling, you know, if expedites is only 5% of our business, 95% is truckload. Let's get you involved on the truckload side. So I think it's always come out. We've always held to our core and kind of that niche area, but at our clients' request. And as we've grown as a company, we have what I call 3 pillars of transportation. And that is expedite, and then full truckload, and then what we call our multimodal department, which is we do a lot of final mile white glove deliveries. And so that runs out of that. And then obviously Candor Food Chain we launched in the spring. And so that, I guess, would be our 4th pillar. My background is food manufacturing. The first 11 years of my career was receiving clerk, warehouse supervisor, materials manager, supply chain manager. And so I think as far as recognizing what some of those challenges are with shipping refrigerated goods, and then paired up with Nicole, our owner. She's been in the industry since the early 2000s. And so I think we've really recognized that shipping refrigerated in our industry has always been a challenge. And so we've always bounced ideas back and forth of how can we make this better? And so that's really how Candor Food Chain started.
Interesting. And we'll talk about Candor Food Chain in a second, but I'm curious. I mean, you're director of strategic partnerships, right? And a lot of we're really focused on like the warehouse side of things, of the supply chain, right, on the podcast. And so we have a lot of listeners that are warehouse operators or 3PLs and things of that nature, doing fulfillment. Talk to us about, maybe a little bit from a partnership perspective, how important is it for a 3PL to have a reliable freight partner, essentially, like Candor, to be able to make some of those moves for their clients and be able to help them externally from just the pick and pack process?
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. I mean, I think all of our success is based upon who we surround ourselves with, what companies we work with. I mean, from being on the shipper side of things, I mean, for me, it was, yes, you want to be cost conscious. I mean, we would do our annual RFP, would have a waterfall down where we would have our cheapest carrier, and there would be 10 carriers. We were supposed to go to the cheapest carrier. If they didn't have capacity, go to the next one, and so on and so forth. And what I always landed on was somewhere in between. So it's that partner who is efficiently had fair prices, but at the same time had exceptional service. And I think when you're working in a 24/7, 365 production setting, and the warehouse is moving and grooving, and you're shipping after hours and early mornings, et cetera, it's like you got to have somebody that can communicate with you. And I think a lot of the carriers, brokers out there, I mean, they might do a great job during the day, but when you're running 24/7, like Candor would be the carrier that I would go to when I had sales executives breathing down my neck, or plant managers shipping on the weekend. Candor is that company that you can depend on. I mean, we do manual updates every 4 hours. We also have GPS tracking on all of our loads. So, in a very competitive area, that being with carriers and brokerages, I mean, I think you have to differentiate yourself. And that's kind of what we've done as far as being somewhat of in a niche, and then also investing in this food chain technology that we really think is going to be a game changer for the food distribution. So
yeah, definitely good to hear there. And I think having that partnership is such a good thing. Like you said, you got something you need to move like quickly, right? And and maybe short notice, or you're behind or something, like you want that partner that you can tap into and have that communication to be able to make that happen quickly and reliably, right? So very interesting there. So let's talk a little bit about kind of this temperature control, temperature sensitive side of the supply chain. You have some experience there, it sounds like, from your career, being on the ground there and doing some stuff as well. But tell us, I guess, before we dive into like the solution, talk to us about the problem, right? So what have traditionally moving some of this temperature sensitive freight, I mean, what has traditionally been some of the challenges there, and why did that lead into you deciding like we can do this in a better way?
Yeah, so I mean, lots of challenges around temperature controlled shipping. I think from my personal experience, one of the biggest challenges is if you have multi-temps that you want to ship on the same shipment, dealing with not having transparency that my product has temperature ranges of X to Y, and in transit, are those getting met? So it's if you're shipping 24 pallets, it's going to go in all refrigerated. You're going to set the full truckload reefer and load all the pallets and go. So that's a pretty simple decision. But where I really struggled with was that 1 to 8 pallet range, where it's like, all right, this is not enough pallets to ship full truckload. And so then you ship LTL reefer. And I mean, I think anybody that regularly ships LTL reefer knows what a struggle it is. If you have multiple temperatures, some frozen, some refrigerated, they use partition walls. I mean, working in a warehouse, those traditional partition walls are not reliable. And so I think that's the biggest thing is like me as the shipper or the client, I want to know that my product is being shipped within the range that I expect. So I mean, if I had 2-3 pallets, I mean, I was shipping full truckload just because standard, reefer LTL
Oh wow.
only picked up from my location once a week. And so you're getting tight lead times from your sales teams. And a lot of these LTL reefers have sailing schedules. So if I have a customer order, it's 4 pallets, 8,000 pounds of chocolate chips. That is too light of a load to ship full truckload. So I'm going to try to manage that cost by shipping LTL reefer. And I think one of the biggest issues with that is you have to accept an order that comes in from sales within the lead time agreed with the customer. And I think trying to get that done when production is more often than not behind is really difficult to get. And so it's like if my sale is they pick up every Tuesday, if I miss that date, then I got to wait till next Tuesday to ship it. So what was happening in that scenario is I'm just putting 2, 4, 5 pallets on a full truckload reefer. And obviously that's very costly.
Yeah, yeah, very expensive and not too sustainable either, I would say, right? And I mean, and not as efficient as you could be. So now was it only pick up on Tuesday because your volume was low, or just because there is limited capacity on the reefer truck side?
It's just them. It's them trying to maximize their capacity. So they're going to pick up in certain areas on certain days to try to move it as efficiently as possible. So
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly challenges there. And I think, certainly like you said, by missing, a shipment by one day, you're adding like a week to the lead time, which is not great, right? I mean, that's not good at all, whether it's going to.
it's not good at all. So my service level expectations was 98.5% on time. So you're constantly doing little expediting. However, it's done that pallet delivers when it is supposed to the client.
Yeah, absolutely. So now tell us a little bit about, you kind of mentioned in here in the beginning a little bit about Candor food chain now. So tell us a little bit about how, you all have taken these challenges and, started to address them and came up with this solution, the food chain.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we essentially came up with our food chain pallets and coolers. So in overview, our coolers come in 3 different sizes. Our pallets come in 3 different sizes. Our biggest pallet has a base that's your standard 48 by 40 pallet. So really what we've created is the potential to ship as a dual temp solution or a tri-temp solution. So really one of the areas that we've taken off and we found the most interest is with food service deliveries. So if you are a company and you have 200 retail stores in Dallas, then there goes in refrigerated and ambient deliveries. And so the solution that we've provided is we can support that and put it all on one truck and deliver at the same time. So if I'm a company that requires food service deliveries, I may have 3 53 footers showing up throughout the day, 1 frozen, 1 shipping refrigerated, and 1 ambient. So what we're doing is we use straight trucks and they're only 26 feet. So what we found is those 53 footers when they pull up to a retail location, it's obviously very inconvenient for not only the driver, but also for the store to take on equipment that big. So using the smaller equipment, being able to deliver 3 different temperatures with your ambient, refrigerated, and frozen at the same time, you're consolidating 3 deliveries into one. I mean, I know you brought up sustainability. That's one thing that we keep hearing over and over from companies and our current clients is especially the larger ones, they have these sustainability goals. And it's like, how do we bring in a sustainable solution, but that's also cost effective? And so we found that specifically with the being able to hold 3 different temperatures on an ambient truck is obviously saves from your carbon emissions by consolidating that.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, like some of those aspects when you're, especially when the example you mentioned, delivering to retailers. I mean, I used to run a fulfillment center in the middle of Philadelphia, and we would take deliveries like in the middle of the street in the
Yep.
city, and that was, yeah, problematic. And we would have times where, I mean, we had no loading dock. We were taking them on the street and pallet jacking them up the sidewalk. And, when we had more than one truck show up, like it was a mess, right? And we had some stuff that was refrigerated and things like that. And, certainly being able to consolidate that and having more manageable deliveries and maybe less delivery appointments too can be a big difference. And certainly I see sometimes too when, just as a consumer, just regular citizen out in the world, I guess you could say,
Uh-huh.
going into like a convenience store or something, and they're getting a delivery from a 53-foot truck, and now like half of their parking lot cannot be used, right, because they're taking up all the space. So there's a lot of impact there in terms of efficiency from the retailer taking in those deliveries, and then also from like the customer experience too, right? If you have a truck blocking off like one part of your parking lot, and now you have congestion in there, and the customer can't get out one exit, and creates an issue for them. So being able to consolidate that and then be more efficient on that delivery and having that mix in there, I think is a huge win all around for the supply chain in a sense, and from the sustainability aspect, as you said as well, because then you're not shipping a half empty 53-foot trailer somewhere. So tell us a little bit about then the technology itself and how it really kind of works.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Do you want more warehouse content delivered to your inbox? Sign up for our new email series called Warehouse Wisdom Wednesday to get an educational series of emails on warehouse basics delivered directly to you every Wednesday morning. Find the sign up link in the show notes.
Sure. Yeah. So we have both coolers and we have our various pallet sizes. So as far as how the technology goes, each pallet, I think, can hold a temperature of between -10 and 70 degrees. So as far as, what your range would be on a full truckload reefer, we would be able to hold with our pallets and coolers. So our coolers can hold for 4 days and our pallets can hold temperature for 9 days. So
Oh, wow.
obviously that gives you a ton of flexibility. They're all GPS tracked. They're all temp logged for each pallet. So for our clients, we can even set them up with portal access to where if you're a QA manager shipping a sample from Kansas City to California, then you can actually see the log of the temperature minute by minute throughout transit. So, and then having 9 days of being able to hold temperature with a pallet obviously gives you a ton of flexibility. You can ship that you can ship that LTL dry, you can ship it full truckload. So yeah, it really gives our clients a lot of flexibility. And like I said, transparency. I mean, it's more and more critical for especially quality and food safety departments to make sure that their product is meeting their expectations when it gets to the final consumer, that
Interesting.
it's safe and quality.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, that's a huge amount of time, right? To be able to have that product still maintain that stability and temperature and be able to last and give you a lot more flexibility on delivering it and handling and all those things. But I mean, I'm curious what actually is like, because you mentioned you can put these on, dry vans, right? And ambient
Yep.
shipping. So, I mean, what actually is keeping it cool or keeping it refrigerated or frozen? What's the technology? I mean, are you filling it with some type of coolant, or is there something else going on there? Or powered? I mean, how does that work?
Exactly. So the way it works is there's panels that go inside of the cooler and so those are actually frozen. And then they are pulled out of the cooler and tempered to the actual range that our customer requires. And so the solution is obviously food grade. And so yeah, that's how it works is they're tempered to the customer's specified temperature range ahead of time.
Interesting. And then who actually, I guess, like in the chain of custody, right? I mean, who actually is like putting those panels together? I mean, like, is it the shipper that has these already like in their possession, and then they're packing them and putting the panels in, or is this something like you're bringing to them in some way and then doing the packing? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are really trying to make this want this to be a full service for our clients. So
Mm.
the way we are managing it now is we will send a Candor representative to your location to pack it, and then we'll handle everything throughout transit, unload. Really kind of, we envision it as a one stop shop where where our clients can depend on Candor to service it all the way through. And then as far as the pouch, though, after delivery, those would go back to our warehouse to be frozen again.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. So basically the shipper, in a sense, I mean, it's not like they're buying these coolers or the pallets and then like they're holding them in inventory. It's
Correct.
you guys, it's basically pay per use, essentially, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we're trying to make it as possible for the clients. So
Mm. Interesting. And so talk to us. I think you guys rolled these out in May. You mentioned earlier, right? Earlier this year. So tell us a little bit about, since you've done that. I mean, how has this kind of, changed some ways that some of your customers think about their shipping of these temperature sensitive products? I mean, how has it really, helped some customers, and what are some of the benefits that they've seen?
to change the perspective on how you can ship temperature controlled. And so, I mean, again, we've really found that niche within food service to, one of the issues for us obviously is making the pallets accessible all over the place. Cause it's like, if I'm shipping from Kansas City to California, I'll ship it with a pallet, but then how am I going to get that pallet back? And I think the way that we envision it on down the line is we're currently in Dallas. We have pallets in Indianapolis and in Chicago. And so, I mean, obviously the goal would be to roll those out to have them in all markets. So if I'm shipping from Kansas City to you in New Jersey, then the pallet would just, we would build up inventory. And then as we need it in other locations, we would, these are stackable. So you could fit 48 pallets on a truck. So we would wait till we build up 48 pallets in that city, and then we can redistribute the inventory to other locations as we need them. So I kind of always explain it as it's like a car rental service. You can pick it up and
Yeah.
you can drive from Kansas City to Indianapolis, and then they just move around their inventories as needed. And so we think that's really the way that we're going to make it cost effective to scale to all, really all the markets.
Interesting. So now, do you have like the Indianapolis and the Dallas locations? Are those your own Candor facilities, or you have like partner facilities where you will store these like throughout the country?
Yeah. So we lease from those facilities.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a super smart approach and solution. And I think, there's so many challenges around temperature sensitive stuff, and mostly, talk about food, right? And, if, even though, yeah, like if I have a steak in my freezer and I defrost it, but then I decide I'm not going to cook it tonight, throw it back in the freezer, like, it's probably like still good, right? But based on like regulations and stuff, if that were to happen with something in transit and shipping, well, it's no good anymore, right? I mean, like it's essentially becomes trash, scrap, right? And so I mean, it's such a interesting way to approach it, and I love the technology approach to it, and I mean, it's fairly simple, I guess, from a technology perspective, but very smart to address what can be a challenging and limited capacity in a sense in some cases. I mean, even the example you gave from your career, where if you miss Tuesday, like, well, see you next Tuesday, right? Where now
Yep.
like, you now can have that more flexibility. You can put it on just a regular trailer and get it where it needs to go, or a regular truck, and not worrying necessarily about booking reefer, having reefer availability, and things of that nature. I think really kind of a game changer in a sense to be able to do that. So I mean, as you look towards the future of this, I mean, what's really kind of the plan for the future, and I mean, how do you think it has like a greater impact on this temperature sensitive supply chain space as well?
Yeah, I mean, so we again, as I was citing examples, that 8 pallets or less, like, and then also tri-temp deliveries in a specific market. So I think I see three avenues of us growing: is A, in the food service, where we can do these tri-temp deliveries. So again, if you have 200 stores in Indianapolis, we can service all of those stores by utilizing one truck. And the other piece of that, from a supply chain standpoint, is that asset stays in the same market, and so we can just bring it back to the warehouse once we're done with deliveries, rinse and repeat. So again, that's the biggest avenue. We also are shipping a lot of samples. So if I'm a fast food chain and I'm based out of Chicago, and my QA department is going to say, "Hey, Candor, I need one lot of lettuce from each of our DCs," which is, say there's four of them across the country. Then we would go pick that product up, pack it, and the other thing is it eliminates dry ice.
Yeah,
So
interesting. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and I think that's a big thing there too, like the elimination of dry ice, right? Because in a sense, that's another big cost added in there, and sometimes there's shortages on dry ice too, and things of that nature, and you have to time that just right to be able to get things moving for the dry ice to last, and make sure you have the right amount and things of that nature. So,
definitely.
and I think it sounds like I guess. I mean, 9 days on the pallet side, right? I mean, that's much longer than you can get out of dry ice, no?
Oh yeah. Well, I think I mean, I used to be a samples coordinator
Okay. Yeah.
was my entry level position out of college, and I think one thing that I've picked up from that is dry ice. If I'm shipping it overnight from point A to point B, then it's probably going to be fine.
Mm,
But if I'm shipping from Kansas City to California and I want a 3-day transit to save on cost, I mean, next day shipping, if you're familiar with it, is super
yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
Super expensive. So I want to do the 3-day transit to cut my cost in, in a third of the cost. And so this would give you the flexibility to do that and know that your product is going to deliver at the temperature that you expected. And what I found is shipping with dry ice, is it 1-day transit, it's probably going to be fine. But as you get into that 2 to 3 day
Yeah.
transit cycle, it starts to dissipate, and you really don't know whether your product's going to show up to the client on time. So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I've talked to a few like e-commerce people that are shipping, either refrigerated or frozen stuff, and basically they're like, yeah, Thursday, Friday, like, yeah, we don't really ship because there's a risk that it doesn't get moved over the weekend, and then it's dead by the time it arrives, essentially, right? So very interesting stuff with you here, Tyler, and really interesting what you're doing with this food chain product. I think it's definitely changes a lot, and I think makes it easier for a lot of companies that are dealing in temperature sensitive product to have more flexibility, and maybe have some of the luxuries that some ambient shippers have now as well. So if people are interested in learning more about either Candor Expedite themselves or the food chain product specifically, what's the best way to do that?
yeah, I mean, just reach out to myself or us. I mean, our website is candorexp.com. So you can go through the contact us section of our website. You can always reach out to me directly. I'm on LinkedIn regularly, so you can message me there or send us an email. So
All right, fantastic. And we'll put All that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can easily find it. So, Tyler, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.